There's a new Steam Deck beta out now, so let's talk about what it adds. After that, I was just on Moore's Law is Dead's Broken Silicon podcast, and we talked a lot about where the Steam Deck is at and where it's going and the potential console war 2 that they're kind of starting. And finally, they're making a single player survival horror HELLRAISER game, and I'm going to tell you about it because it looks amazing. How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is Deck Ready, my channel all about the Steam Deck, and this is a news video where it's basically a video podcast where I cover all the Steam Deck news. If that sounds good to you, help me get to 100,000 subs, subscribe to the channel, set your notifications to all. With that out of the way, let's get into the first news story here, which is just covering the new Steam Deck beta. The first thing they've added is a new notification that pops up when trade protection kicks in and reverses a trade for Steam trading cards, or I guess Counter-Strike cases and keys. I don't know what else you can really trade, but I guess there's like a huge scam going around where people are getting tricked into giving away their entire card library. And I guess you can sell the individual Steam trading cards for money. I know a lot of people who sold trading cards to actually get a little bit closer to having enough Steam credit for their Steam Deck. So be careful who you're trading with. I definitely have gotten a lot of people who add me randomly, then try to trade for my entire library, but they fill the first page with a lot of cards that are the same. So it looks like they're just asking for all of your dupes and everything. And then if you click through, there's a lot more pages than it initially shows. So just be careful out there. Don't trade with people you don't know, and you should be able to avoid this issue. But thankfully, there's trade protection in place in case you get scammed or ripped off. The second thing that comes along with this update is more controller support. They're supporting PDP controllers now, which is a weird company that used to be big when I was a kid, and I haven't heard a lot about them. I think I have some PDP Nintendo Switch 1 stuff, but I honestly thought they went out of business with Mad Catz, so it's nice to know that they're still making Switch controllers, and Valve is keeping up with making sure those work on Steam. As far as what controller I'm using, you all know that I got the 8-bit Do Ultimate 2 controller, and it is awesome. I also dug this thing out, the Steam controller. I used it a few times back when it went on fire sale, but then I put it in a drawer. Take the battery out of these things. That's the only reason I'm bringing this up. When I opened up the back here, which you do with a little switch, it's actually kind of cool. The batteries are AA and they go in the handles. The left one was like heavily corroded, so I had to clean the little contact and everything. It was actually very difficult to get it out. So if you've got one of these just laying around, like you have it in a desk drawer or something, make sure you go take the battery out because they'll corrode and expand and they'll leak into the actual controller. Once I cleaned the contact and put new batteries in, everything was fine. But yeah, I just wanted to give people a warning there because I was digging this thing out to maybe make a video on it, and then I realized it was basically inoperable until I fixed it. So yeah, it is pretty cool though. I've been using it to try some games out, and it was kind of ahead of its time, so I'd really like to see a Steam controller too. But most importantly, they fixed a major issue that I was running into where the keyboard would kind of get bogged down for some reason if you open it up with a heavy game running, or you were downloading stuff in desktop mode in the background and you were kind of maxing out your CPU. The keyboard would kind of like freeze. It would force the input to stay inputted, and it would either go to the special character that would pop up, or it would triple or double input the key that you had selected. I did notice they fixed it because I'm on the beta branch. I didn't realize this was something they actually targeted, because usually when I would update my Steam Deck, it would be fixed for a few days and then it would go back to breaking. But ever since I got this beta update, everything's been fine. A little bit smaller of a beta update. I would expect these won't stay in beta very long. I know a lot of people have been giving me reports that the wake from sleep feature that they added back in after they took it out has been working a lot better. So good job, Valve. Keep doing what you're doing because it's going great. But yeah, for the second story here, I wanted to break down some of the things I was talking about with Tom from Moore's Law is Dead on his Broken Silicon podcast. I got to give this guy a huge shout out. I honestly didn't know him at all, but then Colin Moriarty from Last Day Media was on there. I watched that episode. They mentioned some stuff about the Steam Deck too, so I texted my friend Dustin, who runs all the stuff behind the scenes at LSM. He connected me to Tom, and Tom immediately invited me on the podcast. I've never had more fun being on a podcast, so I can tell you as a person on it that it was really fun. And then I went back and listened to some of it to see what we were talking about because I immediately forgot. Sounded like a pretty good podcast. I don't want to blow myself up too much, but he runs a great show over there, so go check it out. I'll leave it linked down in the description. We talked about a lot of topics, including the Steam Deck 2, and he was kind of pointing in a direction that I had never really thought about with what they're actually working on when it comes to the TV style console, the Steam Machine 2, as I've been calling it. And while I I've been thinking of it as sort of like a big beefy upgrade for the Steam Deck 2, like something you could buy supplementary to it, where when you want to play on the TV with great performance, you use the Steam machine, but if you just want the handheld performance, you would also buy the Steam Deck 2. And he came up with a great idea for another SKU of it that, you know, would strip out the battery, it would strip out the screen, it would just be the bare bones components of the actual Steam Deck 2 in a little puck style box that you could throw in your bag, take with you on a trip. It would only have like an HDMI port, a couple USB ports, and a plug port. And that honestly sounds pretty cool. For me, I would just buy the handheld because you guys know I love handhelds, and I would dock it, right? Like if it had the same components and ran the exact same as the handheld, but just had the components stripped out, I think it would be good enough to also dock. I do hope that whatever they're working on does have a higher end version, because as I talked about in the last video, a lot of the interviews that Gabe has done since the Steam Deck came out, specifically one in 2022, he revealed that most people did not buy the $400 Steam Deck. They bought the most expensive $649 LCD model, and then when the OLEDs came out, everyone went for the 1 terabyte or the limited edition. They were happy to spend more money. So I was kind of talking about how they should tier it up, where you only get a mid-range and a high-range version, and you know, you get good performance that lasts a little bit longer than what we've seen out of the Steam Deck 2. Another interesting thing we talked about though, of course, was what Xbox is doing, kind of bringing the fight to Valve, because he's heard through his sources, which are, sadly it's Bradley, who comes up here all the time on the channel, that Valve is really working hard to make sure that they can really come out swinging once they actually have the Steam Deck 2 ready and this TV style console, the Steam Machine 2, as I've been calling it. And honestly, the timing seems perfect for this. Windows is in a really bad spot. I mean, even outside of the gaming realm, they've been losing millions and millions and millions of people as time has gone on. They're about to lose a lot more people at the end of this year when they break support for Windows 10. And as far as gaming goes on Windows, I think most people who do it a lot are kind of at a breaking point with the overall quality of it. They were on the edge, and then seeing the Legion Go S running Windows be 10 to 20% slower just because it was running Windows than the SteamOS version, that kind of just made people go into an uproar. So Windows, they're kind of reformulating, they're getting the Xbox full screen platform together. I think people are vastly overestimating how much performance gain that's going to bring. I think it'll cut some of the overhead, but unless you're rebuilding Windows from the ground up to be tailored for gaming in a similar way to SteamOS, you can only strip so much out to get real performance gains before you start getting diminishing returns, in my opinion at least. So I don't want people to overestimate that. The weirdest thing that we covered though is what they're doing with the Xbox ROG Ally. He brought up a great point that I also brought up in my video about it. The title is terrible, and it's bizarre that Xbox feels like their brand has been devalued and chipped away at enough to where Asus and ROG go before Xbox in the naming convention. I don't really understand that. But with the ROG Ally, the cheaper version used the Z1 and the more expensive version used the Z1 Extreme, which was the same chip. One of them was just downclocked to run a little bit slower. Then you can put it in a device that has all the same parts but is a little bit cheaper. But with the Xbox ROG Ally, they're doing it differently. They're not doing the Z2 Go and the Z2 Extreme. They're just using the Steam Deck's chip, which ironically, someone commented this. Tom told me the same story. I guess this chip that Valve used originally was made by AMD to be a Surface laptop or Surface device chip, and then Microsoft canceled the contract, and then Valve came in, bought the rights to the chip, tweaked it to be a Steam Deck style chip, and everything was good from there. So now Microsoft is getting it back. But with all the price leaks saying that the two price points of this thing, for the cheaper one is going to be $600 and then the more expensive one might approach $1,000, why are you using the Steam Deck's chip instead of the Z2 Go? That's a 3-year-old chip at this point, and it's using Windows, and it uses a 1080p screen. So it's going to get out of the box worse performance than the Steam Deck any way you slice it. I don't know why they aren't just using the Z2 Go like everyone else. That is a really weird decision, unless they are using that chip so that they can subsidize the price of the hardware when they release it. Like maybe that $600 price is kind of BS or conjecture or something, and the site in Spain that uploaded it with a store page was wrong. Who knows? I just think it's really weird that they're using the same chip as the Steam Deck in a $600 handheld when the Steam Deck's like 3 years old at this point. Tom definitely has a lot more computer knowledge than me. He was dropping terms that I've heard but don't understand, like compute units. I know what the acronym for it is, that little CU, but like, I don't know what the hell a compute unit is. He's talking about, 8 units versus 16 units. So that's why I think the podcast is worth listening to, because he explains this stuff when he drops it, because he probably could tell I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. But another thing we talked about is Sony's eventual handheld and how, you know, they're not really competing with Valve. We talked about how Sony and Valve have a weird friendship where like Sony works really hard to get all of their games verified at launch for the Steam Deck. They put a big banner on the Steam store page that says it's verified. They, as far as publishers go, have the most game specific boot videos that you can officially get on the store. Like you can get Elden Ring, you can get Vampire Survivors, but you can also get Last of Us 1 and 2. I'm pretty sure there's an Uncharted one. I know there's a Days Gone one. I'm pretty sure there's a Death Stranding one, but there's a lot more Sony ones than any other publisher. And it's like, why would they do that if they're going to make their own handheld? I think they understand that the market for their handheld is people who have spent the PS4 and PS5 gens building up huge digital libraries. So like when they release this thing, people are going to have a choice of rebuild a library on Steam and get a Steam Deck and, you know, learn PC, or play the games that they already own, the hundreds and hundreds of games that they bought or gotten through PS Plus. That's an easy pick for most people. And if it has good performance, that's really what matters to most people at the end of the day. It's kind of like a symbiotic relationship, or they're like parallel to each other instead of like, you know, intersecting because they're growing in the same vertical. I don't know if Valve sees Nintendo as a competitor. Obviously they aren't right now because, you know, they're selling orders of magnitude more Nintendo Switches. But if everything kind of works out for Valve the way it seems like it's going to, I think everyone's just kind of worried about it. Like they know that Valve is a sleeping giant. They just hope it takes a little bit longer than it seems like it's going to for them to wake up. Regardless, super fun show. I'd love to go back on it. Again, it's linked down in the description. Massive shout out to Tom for having me on. I had a ton of fun. I hope you can tell. But finally, let's talk about HELLRAISER Revival. Have you guys seen the trailer for this game? It's from Saber Interactive, the guys who made Space Marine 2. They did a Quiet Place game last year. They did the Evil Dead game, which like I thought was great, and I was bummed that they stopped supporting it so quickly. But the big difference between this new HELLRAISER game, HELLRAISER Revival, and a lot of these other games I've mentioned is that it's a single player survival horror game set in the world of HELLRAISER with Clive Barker's involvement. So I don't know if you guys are like me, where when you were a kid, every Halloween they do Fear Fest on AMC. That's how I saw a lot of horror movies growing up, because my parents obviously wouldn't rent me R-rated movies when I was like 7. So I saw the Halloween marathon. That's how I got in love with my favorite franchise of all time. And one night at like midnight, they played HELLRAISER and HELLRAISER 2 Hellbound. I was terrified, dude. Like the effects in that movie still to this day gross me out. And the whole idea of like, I don't know, it sort of has like an Exorcist sort of undertone where like this guy finds this Rubik's Cube and like spends all this time in this gritty, dilapidated basement, like piecing it back together. And then when he does, it opens up a portal to hell that summons these satanic demons who blur the line between pleasure and pain. It was just really cool. And then I went to Sam Goody the next day, still scared shitless from the night before, and they had all of the Cenobites, those high quality Trick or Treat Studios masks, lined up in the back, and I was terrified. But then I saw Butterball and I was like, man, I love Butterball. I'm not scared anymore. And HELLRAISER after that totally just became a joke. Like HELLRAISER 3, you get CD Head, who's awesome by the way, but it's more pulpy. Then you had the fourth one with Adam Scott. He was a major character. It spanned timelines between like the 1600s, I want to say, and like the far future. They did do a Hulu remake from David Bruckner a couple of years ago, which I thought was okay, but they've never really been able to recapture that like gritty, gross, dripping wet, gooey disgustingness of the original HELLRAISER. And if you watch this trailer, I've been playing this entire segment, it's right there. It's right there. It's HELLRAISER. They got Doug Bradley to come back and voice Pinhead. You're basically this guy who has to go rescue your girlfriend using the Genesis configuration, which I guess is like the heavenly version of the Lament configuration. It looks like you're going to go into Leviathan. There's combat with ranged weapons and melee weapons. Like it looks like Resident Evil 7 in the world of HELLRAISER. And thankfully Saber has a good pedigree over the past few years. So I think this is going to be pretty good. And the vast majority of their games like World War Z, Evil Dead, and even Space Marine 2 to some extent, they all work great on the Steam Deck. Mud Runner and Snow Runner and Expeditions of Mud Runner Adventure or whatever, all those included, they all work great on the Steam Deck except maybe Space Marine 2. But I think this game, because it's linear and it's in enclosed spaces, it's not open world, it's very cinematic driven, I think this is something that you could kind of put on your wish list for the Steam Deck. But you know, I've got a channel where I talk about games. They announced a HELLRAISER game. I love horror movies. Just, you know, give me some slack here and and let me gush about it because I was so excited. I got the trailer like 5 days early and I had to sit on it because I was so excited. So I'm glad everyone saw it, and it seems like people are just as excited about this game as me. It seems like it's coming out in 2026, but man, I hope it comes out in Halloween this year because it just looks so damn good. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you in this one. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.